Most of the clients were public multinational firms and in very dire situations. Unfortunately, if I'm involved as a forensic accountant, it's usually not good.
Hi, Doug. Thank you so much for being on my podcast today. How are you?
Very well, Rosie. Thank you for having me.
So we have a special guest today. Doug is a forensic accountant at Aguilera and Associates. Doug, before we start the interview, can you introduce a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I am a CPA, forensic accountant. I have the Certified in Financial Forensics designation from the AICPA. I have my Certified Fraud Examiner's certificate as well as Global Chartered Management Accountant. I have 30 years of experience, and half of those years are with Big 8, now Big 4 firms. I left Ernst & Young in 2008 and started my own practice in Palo Alto, California. And that's where I'm conducting my forensic accounting sole practitioner business. Aguilera and Associates. The Associates is aspirational.
I have a lot of questions to ask about your career. That's going to be a very interesting conversation. Before we go deeper in your career, I'm just curious, why did you go with the accounting major when you went to college?
That's a great question. So I in high school, I really enjoyed my accounting class. It came time to pick a major at San Jose State, and so I selected accounting, not knowing any other reason than it seemed like I liked my accounting class in high school. And then lucky for me, San Jose State really needed accounting majors, and so maybe I would not have been accepted into other majors, but I did get accepted, and I went from there. There is a period of time where I dropped out and was working as a carpenter and decided I really needed to complete my education. And so when I went back, I was going to forego income, and my thought was, okay, I need a money degree if I'm going to make this investment. And accounting seemed like a very good bet. So I chose it 2 different times for 2 different reasons. Not very strong reasons, but lucky me, it turned out to be a good decision.
Why did you say that accounting is a good bet? Did someone guide you through the accounting career?
To someone who's considering accounting career, is that?
Yeah.
Well, it's fun and the possibilities are endless. So while I do forensic accounting, which is incredibly fun, everything that I work on has a story. And it's lots of interesting stories. But you can also be a tax accountant. You can work inside of a corporation. You can do financial statement audits where you go to companies, both public and private, see how they're run, evaluate their operations, and then the resulting financial statements. I have only touched on a few of the possible careers as an accounting major, and even better yet, as a CPA.
Yeah, and then after you graduate, you went to work at Arthur Anderson for 12 years.
Yes.
That's long.
Yes. And I graduated from San Jose State, and I went into the audit practice of Arthur Anderson. And the way that I got there was when I did go back to San Jose State, I joined Beta Alpha Psi. And that was a fantastic decision. I got to know my fellow accounting students. I also got to know a lot of the different firms, both at that time, the Big 8 firms, but also regional and local firms and the people that worked there. And so I got a real good sense of each firm's personality, and I got a real good sense of what the graduates did inside of these companies. And through that process, I narrowed it down to Arthur Anderson and a couple other companies that I really wanted to work for. And as it turned out, I was offered a position and accepted a position in the San Jose office. and in audit. And after a year or so, well, actually, maybe in my first year, I met someone who was in the forensic accounting practice, and I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting. If you ever need any help, please let me know." And the following summer, they did need help. We were working on a large, very interesting project. And so I transferred into that group, and it really propelled me for the next, well, until today. But I was there with Arthur Andersen for those 12 years until the demise. As you may or may not know, Arthur Andersen doesn't exist anymore. And after Arthur Andersen, I went to KPMG for 18 months and then Ernst & Young for 5 years.
So I'm just wondering the transition from Big Eight, because I believe Anthony Anderson, it was in Big Eight before, right? And then
Yes.
you move to EY. It's still a big CPA firm, but what did you know is the difference between those three firms, Anderson, KPMG, and EY?
There aren't a lot of differences. And so, from one to the next to the next, and there are things that I loved being a part of. Most of the clients were public multinational firms and in very dire situations. Unfortunately, if I'm involved as a forensic accountant, it's usually not good. So they are huge litigation projects or huge investigations that require a large team. Frequently, it's a once in a lifetime of the corporation with many complex issues and accounting challenges. So these were really, really big challenges that required a lot of resources and a lot of organization and coordination, and always a steep learning curve getting to know the company and their businesses. Conversely, as a sole practitioner, I am working with smaller partnerships and companies and able to work with all of the detail myself as opposed to relying on others and apportioning the work.
I'm very curious the transition between being the senior manager at EY to start your own. After that, what made you decide that it is a good time for me to leave the big four firm, leave EY, and start my own?
Well, that's a good question. I was in a transition period in my career and my life, and I wasn't finding it as satisfying to be a part of this large organization. And I really enjoyed doing the work hands on. Strangely, I love being in a position where I'm at my desk and there are documents piled up, multiple piles across the desk, and then a horseshoe around my chair of different stacks of documents, all relating to one case, and being able to go through all the different pieces of this puzzle and put it all together. So I really wanted to do more hands-on work, and this, as a sole practitioner, it allows me to do that and to have maybe a bigger impact and or more direct cause and effect. I've done all of this work, and here's the direct effect.
Something I know is that when you work at big firm, they have all the resources for you, from Salesforce, from staffing, from softwares. So now when you move out and you do it by yourself, you have to do everything by yourself. You don't have admin team to take care of all the admin stuff. You don't have marketing team to do all the marketing stuff. Did you feel like overwhelmed? How did you manage all the stress in the first few years when you did your own?
And so, surprisingly, I didn't feel overwhelmed. But before I talk about that, first of all, oh yeah, it is great working at one of these large public accounting firms. All kinds of resources and people. just more than anything else, whatever opportunity came in through the door or over the phone or through email, you could look inside the organization and find an expert. And or if you needed a team of 30 people, you could, put together that team. If you needed to put together a proposal, relying on the marketing team to make it look pretty, all of those things are really, really nice to have. But as a sole practitioner, the volume of work is less and the breadth of it is less. So it's easy enough for me at the end of the month to get my billing together and out. It's easy enough for me to work on a proposal, especially now after all these years. I've got that information pulled together and available to pull together for specific opportunities. So I don't find it overwhelming, and I don't find myself with a great need for assistance.
So you do not have any staff?
I don't. But there have been a few cases in the past where there have been larger projects, and I've done a couple of different things. One, go to temporary staffing organizations, Robert Half, some others, DeWinter. And then in another case, went to Grant Thornton and hired 9 associates to go through documents and emails. So Grant Thornton and I teamed up with a former Ernst & Young partner. So the two of us were leading the project. We were supervising Grant Thornton associates, and Grant Thornton was billing us at a reasonable rate. And so that's how it worked. So in a way, it's a virtual large firm, but in actuality, it's me. I can expand as necessary.
That's so interesting, because I always think that litigation services, you would need a lot of people to work, to go through a lot of documents, a lot of details to finish the project. And so now you can do by yourself, or you can go out and hire people for the short period of time. I'm just wondering, do you have like busy season like tax at all?
No, I tell my friends that it's event driven. And one friend asked me, "Oh, you mean like parties?" No, not whatever the opposite is. It's event driven, so you never know. Many times in my career, I've gotten a phone call at 9 in the evening asking if I can attend a meeting the next morning because the company has just discovered that their financial statements might have been manipulated, or a company has just discovered that the bookkeeper might have embezzled money, those types of events. And then in terms of having resources available for internal investigations where there are allegations of manipulated financial statements, for instance, that does take a large team, or you can deploy a large team, divide and conquer. You might divide up a large collection of emails and divvy it up amongst reviewers. Same with documents, same with conducting interviews around the world. It's necessary, and you can deploy multiple resources. That's one half of what I do. The other half of what I do is litigation support, expert witness work. And in expert witness work, you can use resources to do some of the basic reviews, but the more that you outsource, the less effective, the more that you outsource, the more challenging it is in deposition and trial. Because if you haven't actually gone through and looked at, say, bank statements, but someone else did, when you're asked about that process, you have to say, well, I relied on somebody else to look through that, which is a vulnerability that opposing counsel loves to exploit. So if I'm doing all the work and I've touched all the documents and I've gone through all the transactions, it's much easier for me to be a strong proponent for my opinion. Whatever that opinion is, I'm advocating for it. And it's easier to advocate for it when I know firsthand all of the different pieces of information.
So, Doug, I think our audience probably knows a lot about tax services, audit services, or like tax advisory or tax consultant services, but I don't think they hear a lot about litigation services. Can you explain the difference between audit services versus litigation services so audience can understand better about what you're doing?
Sure. I would first of all group it at a higher level, forensic services. And inside of forensic services, I divide it into internal investigations and litigation support. So in both cases, I describe it to people as trying to put together a puzzle, and you don't have the picture on the box, and a lot of the pieces are missing. So you have to fill in the blanks. So you grab what you can wherever you can. And what that means for us as accountants is you might have a general ledger with accounting transactions. You might have tax returns. You might have financial statements. You might have invoices. You might have receipts. You might have journal entries. You have the opportunity to interview people. And through all these sources of information, you start to put this picture together and come up with I was going to say a story. It usually is a story, but come up with your evaluation of what you think happened. And in that happens in both the internal investigations and the litigation support. In the litigation support, frequently there's a dispute between two companies, and the information that's available is limited to what's been collected by the attorneys. And so you go through all of that in great detail. And again, it might be those same items. And you come up with an opinion about how the transactions or the events should be accounted for. One of the other things that frequently happens is there might not be any general ledger. There might not be any financial statements. There might not be any tax return, but there will be bank statements. Unless you're in the cannabis industry, and then there might not even be bank statements, might just be cash. So you just come in and you take what's available. Maybe it's just the tax return and the bank statements, and it might require recreating books and records, or it might be the books and records and the bank statements, and they don't match. So now you have to figure out the bank statements. Usually, if they're not fraudulent bank statements or manipulated bank statements, can be relied on, and you build from there.
Wow, sounds like you are an FBI in accounting services.
Yes. Yes, there are many FBI agents that are doing what we do. So there's another opportunity is in law enforcement, FBI, offices of inspector generals. So you can go into the government and be incredibly valuable as a CPA and as a forensic accountant.
That's amazing. That's very interesting because I don't think I have interviewed a lot of people doing what you are doing now. So that's a very interesting topic that I don't think we hear a lot every day. Even I know a lot of CPAs out there doing forensic accounting. It just happened that it's not very common being around those people for me.
Yeah, it isn't a very common form of a profession. It isn't that common in our population of CPAs and accountants. And, you rarely would need a forensic accountant. But if you do need a forensic accountant, you really need a forensic accountant badly, because something very important is going on or has gone wrong. So I find that the work that we do is very valuable. And besides, more importantly for me personally, is very interesting. All of these matters that I've been involved with are really interesting and frequently very challenging.
So I'm just picturing your services. It means that you may not need to work whole year, 12 months. You may probably very busy couple months to finish one big project, and then you probably make enough revenue for the rest of the year because, as you said, that it's not something that happen every day. But if you need it, you really need it. It means that they are willing to pay a lot of money to get the services, right?
The way that Yes. And the way that I think about it, one way that I think about it is that I was working in audit in public accounting for Arthur Andersen. And it always felt like on the first day that I got there that we were already over budget and out of time. And the audits you can only charge so much for. I think the same might be for tax returns.
Yep.
But then when I transferred into the litigation support services, it wasn't that way. They weren't as restrictive on, say, bringing lunches in if we were working a really long day, or on the amount of time that it takes, because it takes what it takes, and you never know. And the services are really valuable. So when the services are really, really valuable, you can charge more money. Or, in the exchange of value, on the one hand, money, on the other, service, it's maybe at a higher plateau.
I see.